Welcome back to Beauty Uncovered by Olaplex. Really excited about this week's guest. It is Shelly Omilâdé Bell, and she is the founder of Black Girl Ventures. Now, not only is she a computer scientist, but also a serial entrepreneur, a disruption strategist, and an inspirational speaker. She is the founder, like I said, of Black Girl Ventures. And that is a social enterprise that creates access to social and financial capital to Black and Brown women founders. It's incredibly exciting, the programs that they have, and I'm really excited to share with all of you. So with that being said, let's get started. I was just saying to you that I am overwhelmed. I was doing research on you online, and I could not get over the amount that not only you have already done, but just the extent of it all. I can't even wrap my brain around it. Are you very tired?
Oh my goodness. It's so crazy you should say that. A little.
Now, are you
I like
right
to be
now,
honest.
You're on the road right now, aren't you?
No. So we have a activation that's called Pull Up and Pitch. And it's the idea behind it is to just like normalize people pitching and like, especially women, like shoot your shot, just make that normal for us, like, stepping up and saying what you have and then expecting that somebody should give you capital for it. So it's called Pull Up and Pitch. We're doing it together with Visa. And we're doing 4 cities, but we have to do them virtually because of Omicron. So the original one is like on the street. It's like a Visa and BGV cover, sprinter. We got people lined up down the street. It's an awesome, fun time. People cheering for each other on the street. Pitching again, access to capital, but we have to move it to virtual. So we'll be doing Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, and Miami.
Wow. That is so exciting. I have like so many different questions about all of this. And I actually had some friends that were like, you got to find out about this. You got to find out about that. So, and some of them from North Carolina too. So that was really exciting. So I was reading a description of everything that you do. And I love that it's a disruption strategist, a serial entrepreneur, inspirational speaker, computer scientist. You also were a teacher as well. First of all, I have to say up front that I am a big fan of computer scientists. My father was one, and my kids are all like coders and whatnot. So they get really excited over that. But I have to ask, because this was one of the first things I read about you, and I have to say it right now. What is it true that your very first business venture was an Airbnb listing of a teepee in your living room?
Yes. So, well, I would say that's my very first business venture because I always had a side hustle. So even doing all those things that you named, being a K through 12 educator, I worked for the Patent and Trademark Office for a while. I worked in workforce development. I had my own art organization and went back to working because it wasn't making enough money. But this was the time when I was like, I am not going back to work for anyone. I gotten laid off twice back to back. And I did the only thing that a person who's gotten laid off twice back to back could possibly do. I called California psychics.
Oh,
and I said, what is happening to my life? And
I might have done something like that before in my life, so I get it.
Because you got to hear from a higher power, right? If you don't know what's going on, you're like, somebody tell me something. So this person, she told me, when you find the thing you want to do, the money will come. And you're not going to be engaged to that guy. And this was my rock bottom, right? My rock bottom was that I have a 7-year-old who's homesick. But my rock bottom was that now my engagement is broken off from this person I thought I was about to start a whole new life with. I have 3 children at that point, and the smallest one was 1. And I have no job. I'm laid off. So I'm going to start a business. So I threw everything out of my living room and I started thinking, what can I do? And I built a tent in my living room and everybody thought I was crazy. I was at Home Depot. I didn't even know how to drill a hole at the time. The associates were like, what are you doing, ma'am? I was like, I'm going to build this tent, put it in my living room and rent it out. And they're like, nobody's going to sleep in your living room in a tent. However, Airbnb has lots of different kinds of experiences. And this was one of them. So I had a lot of people that actually wanted to come and stay in that tent. After letting one woman come and stay, I quickly found out that I didn't want people sleeping in my living room.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what else can I do? I landed on a print shop and a t-shirt line called Made by a Black Woman. And with it, my mom was my first investor. She gave me $10,000. I used my tax return to buy my own machines because I knew that I could leverage that somehow. I could sell them. They were assets that I could get my hands on and use to build a business. But also if I needed extra capital, I could have insurance policies on them and things like that. That worked. People loved it. My mom and I hit the road. We vended all up and down the East Coast, everything from Afro punk size events to small festivals locally. And then the news came out. Black women are starting businesses at 6 times the national average, yet receiving less than 1% of venture capital. And honestly, my thought was just like, okay, I could do something about that. Let's pull some people together, throw some money in a hat and give it away. And so our first event was 4 women who got up and talked about their business. And then we voted with marbles and coffee mugs. No. If you like that person, just put your marble in their coffee mug. And the person with the most marbles, I would split the admission fee with. And this actually comes from Black history. So in the early 1900s, during the Great Migration, white landowners raised their rent and Black people threw parties to stay in their homes. And, these included, Duke Ellington, Langston Hughes, people like that who were really African-American greats in the course of history were involved in helping people stay in their homes by throwing these parties and taking the admission fee and paying the rent. So essentially, I created the largest rent party for Black and brown women identifying entrepreneurs in the world. We now have funded over 270 women. We have efforts across about 15 cities. We're launching on the West Coast in LA in the spring with our fellowship. We have the pitch program, which is what I described, which is like Shark Tank meets Kickstarter. So it's crowdfunded. And then we grant the capital to the founders. So you can vote with your dollars and then we grant that capital to the founders. We also have a fellowship program that's 9 months long and it's focused on leadership because I realized that during all the work that I'm doing that we need more people at the table in the hyperlocal markets. And we just are about to launch a new program called Next Gen, which is in partnership with the NBA. And we'll be working with HBCU entrepreneurs.
So when I was looking at the site, which I encourage everybody to go to Black Girl Ventures, I was reading a little bit about it and it was saying here, you fund and scale tech-enabled revenue-generating businesses under 1 million, founded by people who identify as Black or brown and women. So just so I'm clear on this, does that mean, because this was something that someone was asking, does that mean that it's only tech companies, being that you have that computer background, or is this really anybody that's looking for a business venture?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's tech enabled. And I mean, right now, everybody's tech enabled because we're, quasi still quarantined. Nobody's operating without tech. So prior to the pandemic, though, the focus was strongly on tech enabled businesses. So you don't have to be a tech company. We're industry agnostic when it comes to the pitch competitions or the pitch program for the most part. However, we do look at like industries based on the partner. So when we did the competition with Nike, we did sports and wellness. We did a competition with Rare Beauty Brands and Ulta Beauty, and that was clean beauty focused. So we do have those that are industry focused, but for the most part, the pitch program is industry agnostic. Now, if you want to engage in some of the other programs, like the fellowship program, you could be a corporate employee who's just interested in being a leader in community. You don't necessarily have to be a business owner to be a part of the fellowship.
So tell me what with the fellowship, because I was reading a little bit about that and I thought it was fantastic. Like I thought this was like exactly what people need, is having that kind of community. Could you expand on it? Tell us a little bit about, what a person would be expecting if they were to join something like this.
Yeah, so I'll tell you where it came from, right? The pitch competition became so popular that everybody wanted to come to their cities. Hey, you go to my city, can you come over here? And I was like, oh my gosh, we got to think of how to scale this. Like, what would it mean to make this go bigger? And so my thought was, you know what? I'm just going to train everybody on how to do crowdfunded pitch competitions. And, people were like, don't do that. People are going to steal your idea. And I'm like, you know what? If everybody starts doing crowdfunded pitch competitions, I will have created an immense amount of change in the world and I can back up and do something else. Mm-hmm. So my fear was not around like whether somebody would steal it, right? I knew that the community part of what we do is really the big deal. So there's no way, even if you do a crowdfunded pitch competition, it would not match up to what we do, because what we do is about people. It's not about the competition itself. So I came up with this idea to recruit 25 women from 5 different cities and train them on exactly how to do the BGV pitch competition. And our first believer was the UN Marion Kaufman Foundation, our first 6-figure believer. And I gave them this idea of, how we wanted to expand. And they said, okay. So we did. We recruited 25 women from 5 different cities. We brought them to the DC area because we're based. We trained them. They actually saw competition happen real time. At this time, I was just developing the tech platform that we have now. It's now called Razorify. It used to be called She Raise. I was just developing and beta testing that. So they got to see the full gamut, have a retreat. It was amazing, an amazing kickoff. The city started to kick off. I think we got through Houston, we got through Philly, and then boom, COVID hit.
Uh-huh.
And we went into quarantine. Now, the downside is I didn't get to scale in the way I had hoped, in terms of with that particular program in that way that I was thinking. However, I got to scale on a whole other level, because we decided then, hey, we'll just let the founders that we recruited to be a part of the fellowship, we'll still let them just go train other people on what they feel like they should train them on.
It's amazing what you think is like a curse at that moment is actually a blessing, right? It turns into something so much bigger than you thought.
100%. And I mean, being quarantined, I immediately pivoted to an online platform. Mm-hmm. So we launched BGV Connect, and then we started the weekly co-working sessions. And they became a huge help because people didn't know where to find things. So then it was like, they were together just telling each other, hey, apply for this. Oh, look, I'm applying for this grant. And it just became such an amazing space for people. We still do it. We're 2 years strong now, co-working every Wednesday. Wow. And so our community can hop on and they just really talk to each other. It's all about just how can we bring the humanness to entrepreneurship, because we're all doing it. We want to, a lot of people are doing it and figuring out how do we share information in a way that makes sense and makes sense for, different communities.
So I have to ask, because I saw in there that you had 260 plus women that were funded. Is there any particular story that is such a standout to you where you go, every time you think of it, you just get chills?
Oh my gosh. You know what?
This is all of them, right?
I know. And this is one of those questions where I'm like, that can't be saying it's recorded. I would say that the companies that I like, I can't say like the most.
It's almost like picking your favorite child. You can't do it.
I know. But the companies that tend to stand out to me are the ones with the not only a great model and things like that, but the most resilient. And so one of them that I really love is Kai XR, which is a platform to take children on field trips using VR. And this was, she was entering the metaverse way before it now she was building the metaverse way before it became so popular. But what I really appreciated about her story is telling the story of being a kid who couldn't afford to go on field trips. And what that meant for her and what field trips meant for her, right? And to now be able to take students to see the portrait gallery without even leaving home is really amazing to me. And I just love the idea of how you solve different kinds of problems. I mean, we have lots of amazing business owners in our portfolio, and I can't choose just one, but that is usually a standout story for me.
I find that of course that is a tech one, right? Because it
is a tech one. Okay, I got a food one.
No, I was saying the reason I'm saying it is because my eldest son, who is also in school, he's in college for computer sciences. And I remember when he was in high school and he had a teacher, oh goodness, I can't remember her name, but what she used to do is take him to the middle school to really encourage girls to get involved in tech. and get them into coding at a younger age. I don't know if it was the appeal of taking a high school boy down to the middle school. I don't know what it was. But I mean, that it is a real thing that women are not in tech positions as most are. I mean, there are, but not as much as we would like to see, and especially women of color. What do you feel about those? I mean, is this something that should be more expanded on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's layers to it, right? I would say broadly, the ways that things are promoted to boys and the ways that tech looks to boys, right, is just much different from the way that it looks or is promoted to girls. Let's take like if you look at the video games that they deemed are cars and women walking around and and everything's kind of a little dark and a little gray and a little grunge look, and then for girls it's like, oh, here's this cutesy, everything has hearts and it's pink and it's purple and it's just so indicative of like how gender is pumped to us. Mm-hmm. I think there's another part to that, and I read an article about this a while ago that was talking about how what happens is that girls get engaged in tech early, but because tech is not usually pumped to them over time throughout the course of their life, or the way that tech looks or the way it's oriented toward boys, that over time girls lose interest.
Yeah.
It's not that women are less techie. Is that like over time it's like, okay, well, this is not as fun anymore in some ways.
Especially as they're getting older, they're not putting the focus on those girls, right? Or
that's right,
catering the program somewhat to their interests. And if it's always about the boys, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, do you feel as though with the different people that are coming into you to get funding, are there more women that are in tech than there used to be?
You know what I think? I think that there are more women who are taking their own chances with what it means to be in tech, right? Because I think that like nowadays in tech means what, right? I think if oh Lord, I hope Black Tech Twitter doesn't come for me, but I think that there are just multiple ways to be in tech, right? So like when I was in school, we learned full stack everything. There was no like, oh, you're front end and then you're a back end. You're like, there was none of that. You learned the entire front end, back end, side door, all the things that you had to learn. You learned all of it. There was no separation. So now I think that there are a lot of, people who are journeying into tech in different ways. Also, now that we have social media, there's a different kind of layer of like what it means to be in tech. Because the hackers who can get like growth hackers, and I don't mean negative or hackers. I mean, growth hackers around like helping you grow your platform or things like that. That's super techie because they have to know how these APIs work. They got to stay up on the algorithms. They got to know how the algorithms work, know how to play against them. So I think that there are the field of tech is a little broad. I will also say that, there's still a lot of the network effect of tech kind of prevents it being as inclusive as it could. And that's because, so like if you want to find an engineer and you're going to ask, the male engineers you have, then they probably are recommending male engineers, right?
Right.
So I think that's where things kind of get like lost in translation, but also blocked out, like sometimes innocently and then sometimes maybe blatantly. I also think that people are pumping a lot of money into hiring and not enough money into retention. And so I think in tech, that's a huge challenge, is that people keep talking about hiring inclusively, but not retaining inclusively.
It does make you wonder if that's part of the reason why they're talking about that, everybody resigning, from their jobs and everything, because they're not really working on that retention.
I mean, also people either want to work for better people. So I think like having to work from home clicked on some realizations for people, right? It was risk that they wouldn't take. They wouldn't take the risk of working from home. Some people, they wouldn't take the risk of having to care for their children and work. They would not, voluntarily, some people would not voluntarily take that risk. But now I think people are seeing like, I'm at home, I'm producing the same amount in the same way. I'm still great. well, dang, I could have been doing this for myself or for
Right.
someone that I feel more valued by. Why would I enter back into offices where I don't feel valued? Why would I go back to work with teams day to day? Now that I've been working from home and I feel great, or I'm balanced, I'm harmonizing my life. Why would I go back into an office where I've been traditionally discriminated against or, any of those things? It just doesn't make sense. So I think a lot of people are saying like, hey, I'm gonna just take my chances and see what happens.
It makes me wonder if, with it, the great resignation that a lot of people are calling it, whether or not the uptick of entrepreneurship has really happened. Like, I feel like it has. I think a lot of people are starting to think that they can do this themselves. Like, why am I, going into an office when I can work from home and be productive?
100%. And I think there's twofold because we're hiring right now. And so I'll tell you what I've been seeing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who are either leaving and just starting companies altogether and just taking their chances. And then there's some people who are like, I just want to work for a better person or a better group of people or a better company while I think about what I want to do. And so I think that I'm seeing both of those. I think there is an uptick in entrepreneurship. And I think sometimes the uptick in entrepreneurship is being measured by the number of businesses registered. That doesn't necessarily mean that it becomes an actual business, that it makes revenue, any of that. However, I think people are starting and saying, I'm going to just start, like, I'm just going to register. And then I'm either going to work for somebody I like better and then figure out how I want to, this endeavor to grow, or I'm just going to jump out there and start this thing all together.
Wow. I mean, it's a valid thing. And I sometimes think to myself that there's probably a lot of people that are trying to find meaning in their job, which is really hard sometimes. And really, when you start going into entrepreneurship, it really does. It can be your life passion. It could also be the thing that's keeping you up 24/7.
24/7. I mean, I'm never not thinking about, I tell people when they come meet me or come to work for us that what's different about this is I'm the founder, right? Like normally, like, when you meet people at certain levels, they're the like third, fourth, fifth, 100th CEO, right? Like this literally, I started it from zero with $0. So I still know what that meant. And I think even in that, I have to be conscious of that as a leader and know when to like move out, step back, let other people discover, create, and just learning what it's like to like be the leader of leaders.
So how did you get the attention of all these different partners that are coming in there and helping you out with this, like Visa and you said the MBA as well?
The MBA, yeah.
So what is it something that you aggressively went after, or they were like looking at this and going, okay, this is something valid?
Yeah, I think there's a mix of both because like with Nike, we had reached out to them prior, before Visa, we had reached out to them before. When George Floyd was murdered, we had a lot of companies reach out to us. And, we were ready. So I also want to say that part of the reason why we were able to not only like get the calls, but to solidify true collaboration and partnership was that we were ready. So like I've been, me and a team or me and one person or two people or volunteers, like we have been doing the work. So we already, we were putting numbers on the board. We just needed the visibility. And once that visibility hit and companies like Nike, Experian, Visa started announcing that they were working with us, it really just steamrolled. But I mean, the reality is you still had to be ready. So it wasn't necessarily enough to just be Black, but you had to have your model together. You had to have your ability to talk in these conversations, negotiate, figure out what you needed from a funding perspective, and then show how you were going to grow or impact. Like all those things still existed. It's just the conversations became more accessible. Mm-hmm. And from there, we just took off and really built true collaborations.
So what is your hope for this? Like you've been doing this for a bit. I mean, you've obviously touched a lot of women and made a huge amount of difference. Where do you hope to go from here?
We're looking at international expansion. I mean, I would love to see a BGV UK, a BGV Africa, BGV Nigeria, things like that, BGV Ethiopia. Like I would love to see us go international. I think we're also going to, really put some strong stakes in the ground from a regional perspective. Launching in LA in March will be our first time launching on the West Coast.
Wow.
And so we're looking at and studying the different ecosystems and what it means to serve underrepresented founders in each. And it's different in each. Like, the founders in Birmingham are not like the founders in Philly, right? The founders in Philly are not like the founders in Chicago. And we learned that by creating more community. I think the real secret sauce, and I'll tell anybody this when you're building community, is not to be one to many, but to create a many to many experience that you kind of get to lead and frame up, right? The people are the point. Their success is our success. And even the people who are giving or donating, they're still community members.
So when the next question I have is like, because when I was reading about the fellowship, and then, you also have the on the road where they're pitching their idea and everything. Is there a place or some kind of classes that you're doing that has to do with the basic startup and the different things that they have to overcome? Because obviously the community that you have, so that way they can spread outwardly from there, is phenomenal. But does it also touch on that? Because I did have a lot of people when they heard I was talking to you saying, I have this idea, or I've started to grow my business and I don't know how to get it to the next level, especially when it's so difficult to get the capital. But also just how to navigate all those pieces.
Yeah, so we do, with the HBCU program, we call it Student Visionaries. And then in terms of who we're looking for, we call it early stage action phase, meaning that like they don't have a lot of revenue, but they do at least have some presence. They've started. When it comes to the BGV pitch program, we do coach them. So when they come in, there's an application process. And then we narrow it down to 7 people. We coach them. And then there's a production where we have champions and we have them pitch. And then from there, we have they go up on our tech platform, proprietary software called Razorify. And you can view the pitch and you can vote with your dollars. But there is coaching involved along the entire way. So like when you come in, they don't come in the way that they end up being when you see the video. Like when they come in, we have coached. We've had several pitch practices, talked them through it. Other community members and alumni taught them through it. We have our partners come and talk them through it and give advice, because giving pitch advice essentially end up giving business model advice.
Right.
Because what people have laid out in their pitch is essentially what they're saying their business model is. Now with the fellowship, it is all training. So it's 9 months of training. Then they train other people, but that training is focused on ecosystem mapping. Because what we found is that if you don't know what you don't know, similar to the people that you're mentioning, if you don't know what you don't know, how do you find out? You find it out through community.
I absolutely agree. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think from here, is there any big events or anything that our listeners can do to participate in this?
Oh, yeah. Follow our email, join our email list. So go to blackgirlventures.org, follow our email list. Also follow us on Instagram or TikTok. We're real big on there, and it's at Black Girl Ventures. It's also at B Girl Ventures on Twitter. Check out all the opportunities there. Figure out what fits for you, whether you're an investor, a potential funder, you want to volunteer your expertise, or you want to actually just shoot your shot and pitch your business. With the BGV Pitch program, there's an application. With Pull Up and Pitch, there's no application. All you literally have to do is show up to the virtual event and raise your hand. We'll bring you up and shoot your shot, and you can get money right on the spot. So for those people who have established a business but are still working on what's going to happen next, that's an amazing opportunity. Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, and Miami. Visit the site. You can also RSVP there. You can also take a look at some of the other things we're doing with Nike and Visa and Experian, and just let us know where you want to get in. I think the first step is the first step, to just take it.
And for people that want to be like part of the crowd, so to speak, that's, throwing in their support to a particular business and want to donate, would they go to Razorify?
Yes. So razorify.co, RAISIFY.co. And it will, a new competition is coming up soon. So definitely join the mailing list, and we'll let you know everything that's going on. You can also follow me, because I'm funny. And you can follow me.
I saw your birthday video. So yes, you're funny.
Oh, awesome. At I am Shelly Bell, and that's everywhere. I am Shelly Bell, Instagram, Twitter. My website is, you could go to imshellybell.com or theworldofomi.com.
Well, I think this is really exciting. I mean, I keep on thinking to myself, wouldn't that be awesome if it ended up being like the level of like being on not on Shark Tank, but having its own Shark Tank kind of show.
That's where we're going. So hey, if anybody's out there want to produce this BGV pitch competition. So interestingly enough, so one of our founders, she won the America's New Deal, America's Big Deal. She was the first winner. Her company is called Minky Blue. It's a amazing backpack and bag company. She won America's New Deal. It was like, it's like a shoppable TV pitch competition that comes on. So she won that. Another one of our founders who early on, her name is Tania Speaks, actually just got a $400,000 deal on Shark Tank for her brow company. So our founders, they're moving and shaking.
Wow. Talk about success stories. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Really great information. We'll be sure to put some links in the description. So anyone that's listening, be sure to go and check it out. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.